Here, no political correctness and no wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
Thanks for downloading, listening, and sharing. My name is Frank Salvato, and you're spending a few moments in Underground USA. In reading the many news and polling outlets yesterday, I came across an article that reported on a recent poll, the results of which are intensely disturbing. This poll, conducted by the Napolitan News Service, revealed that 28% of Democrats believe the United States would be better off if Donald Trump had been killed during one of the two assassination attempts on his life. It also revealed that 1/3 of the respondents believed Trump or his campaign might have been involved in the assassination attempts. The poll also revealed that a full-throated 45% of voters pointed to anti-Trump rhetoric as the major factor driving the violence. These points are critical for everyone to understand and reflect on. 1/3 of Democrats believe the death of the opposition candidate at the hands of an assassin would be good for the country. The entirety of the country, or at least the sane 70%, should be foaming at the mouth, pissed off with these 30%. It's shameful, if that's even a thing anymore in 2024, that anyone, anywhere in the free United States of America should be wishing for the death of someone because they disagree with their politics. It's reprehensibly hateful, and those who feel this way need to be publicly ostracized and shamed. Quintuply disturbing is that this homicidal hate is coming from the ideological group that preaches tolerance, diversity, and inclusion, usually at caustic decibels that should be found to be exceeding most noise ordinances. This disingenuousness and hypocrisy is astounding. Do you remember just a few decades ago? Tough for Gen Z and Gen Alpha to do, I know. But do you remember when the political left wanted to dialogue everything? To dialogue every issue? To sit down and find common ground? Where the hell did that Democrat Party go? When did Democrats, and especially far-left Democrats, become so nauseatingly caustic and intolerant? Some are squeamish to say this, but I'm not. As I wrote in my last article, is it even possible to get back to e pluribus unum? The move to opportunistically divide our nation, and this comes after the U.S. Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, and after a time when our nation was becoming colorblind. It all started with Barack and Michelle Obama, who, by any critical standard, harbor a bias against traditional Americanism for their embrace of victimhood. I offer a list of quotes made by both Barack and Michelle that exhibit their racism, their hate for Americanism, and their want to fundamentally transform the United States of America from a sovereign and free nation to one ruled under democratic socialism. If democratic socialism sounds familiar, it should. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the hateful far left of today's fractured Democrat Party claim to be all about democratic socialism. But history should ring with this party label too. The National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party, was sold to the German people as democratic socialism. But like all socialist and Marxist pursuits, Hitler's Nazi regime was characterized by extreme militarism and totalitarianism. Democratic socialism has also been attempted in Venezuela, Bolivia, Chile, and disingenuously in Cuba and Russia. It fails everywhere it is tried because human nature mandates that the allure of power is too great an aphrodisiac. Totalitarianism, born of Marxist socialism, democratic at its beginning or otherwise, always leads to oppression and genocide. This is the philosophy held by the Obamas. Anti-colonialist Marxism, with just a twinge of Islamofascism, evidenced by Barack's statements, quote, The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. And the sweetest sound I know is the Muslim call to prayer. And Michelle's statement, quote, I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves. There's many more listed in the article aforementioned. This is where the hate started. And as I stated in the article aforementioned, while these statements may seem nuanced compared to today's inflammatory rhetoric, they set the stage and open the stage door for the more zealous politician, the more opportunistic politician. It groomed the path forward for unbridled hate to be marketed to the American people, many of whom are too fickle to understand its divide and conquer intent. It paved the way for Kamala Harris to say, does one of us have to come out alive? Cackle, cackle. And for Joe Biden to say, it's time to put Trump in a bullseye. It opened the door for U.S. Representative Dan Goldberg, a Democrat from New York, to say, Trump is destructive to our democracy and he has to be eliminated. For U.S. Delegate Stacey Plaskett, a Democrat from the Virgin Islands, to vomit, Trump needs to be shot. And for Rick Wilson, the reprobate co-founder of the deep state-supporting Lincoln Project, to spew, they're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump. This is the fruit of the poison tree that Barack and Michelle Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Susan Rice, Eric Holder, Samantha Power, and the entirety of the Obama team, now Obama 2.0, unleashed onto our society. It is hateful, it is uncompassionate, it is intolerant, and it is divisive. In fact, it can be argued that the statements made by Goldman, Plaskett, and Wilson violate Mr. Trump's constitutional rights, as these remarks are not considered political free speech. The U.S. Supreme Court has established several categories of speech that are not protected by the First Amendment, including fighting words, speech that by its very utterance tends to incite immediate violence or breach of peace, true threats, statements where the speaker means to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual or group of individuals, an incitement to imminent lawless action, speech that is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. This standard was established in Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969. But in a day and age when the Attorney General of the United States is completely political, the constitutional rights of a former president and current presidential candidate who has been the target for politically motivated assassination, they don't amount to much. Just like in Venezuela, Bolivia, Chile, Cuba, and Russia. I'm sure that the ideologically oblivious Obama sycophants will castigate me for pointing out that the genesis of today's murderous hate fest started with the Obamas. But as they say, the truth hurts sometimes. George Orwell also said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So tell me, what's so bad about being a revolutionary when you stand on the side of truth? Nothing. But today, given the hate, you may just need some Kevlar. When we come back, a few words on where our society's failure to defend against the march of Marxism has delivered us. You're listening to Underground USA. My name is Frank Salvato. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Who helped cause soaring gas prices? BlackRock. Who contributed to outrageous housing prices? BlackRock. BlackRock and Larry Fink spent years harassing oil and gas companies, making them divest from fossil fuels. Now you feel the pain. And BlackRock-owned companies are snatching up houses, crippling families. Now BlackRock's former ESG czar, Brian Deese, is Biden's economic advisor, crushing America from within. That's what BlackRock is really about.
Our First Amendment right to free speech is under attack by woke activists and politicians. Wokeism seeks to suppress opinions and ideas that are deemed offensive, insensitive, or problematic, thereby stifling the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. It emphasizes social justice, identity politics, political correctness, and the regulation of language, and relies on euphemisms and ambiguous language to create the illusion of consensus, thus avoiding confrontation with opposing viewpoints. Wokeism is antithetical to free speech because it stifles the free exchange of ideas and the pursuit of truth. This is in direct opposition to the principles of free speech. Wokeism is an ideological cancer shopped by those who want to control you. This November, we have an opportunity to render wokeness to the ash heap of history. Vote smart. Vote against wokeness and those who would use it to control you.
And, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
You're listening to Underground USA.
There's a great 6-part course, a free course, offered by Hillsdale College titled Marxism, Socialism, and Communism. I just finished it, and it gives a great overview of the history and evils of all three. I've just started another course there, a bit longer, titled The American Left, From Liberalism to Despotism. I expect to be equally impressed with that content. If you read the articles or listen to the podcasts at undergroundusa.com regularly, you understand that there truly is a Marxist movement in the United States and that it has reached the halls of the federal government in at least 2 of the 3 branches. Additionally, the far left of the Democrat Party is overt in its embrace of Marxist socialism, bordering, in some cases where specific policy is concerned, on communism. There are some who scoff at this declaration, but they're blind to what's happening in our country, or in denial, or both. This is the reason I cited the courses at Hillsdale College. One of the targets of any Marxist, socialist, communist regime or movement is to disarm the public. It's been said over the past 124 years that we, in the United States, don't have to worry about a Marxist march on our freedoms because we have the force of the Second Amendment to protect the rest of our natural law rights, codified in the Bill of Rights. But the Marxist left in our country has been whittling away at the Second Amendment, as they have all our rights, incrementally, installing socialism through legislation little by little. The Second Amendment has not been immune to this. A recent resurfaced video of Kamala Harris, when San Francisco's district attorney, examples how Marxists finagle their way into diminishing our rights with sweet-sounding, emotionally charged, disingenuous bullshit. Listen here.
It's people who own guns who are quietly sitting on those guns, and those guns might end up being the weapons of the destruction of a community because they get in the hands of some kid who decides that they like what they see on television and they want to act that way. So this is about just basically saying that we're going to require responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Now, today, as she campaigns for the presidency as a gun owner, she's giving short shrift to her embrace of implementing a mandatory gun buyback program and outlawing so-called assault weapons. By the way, what weapon, from gun to knife to club, isn't an assault weapon? That's right, the definition belongs to the activist, not the people. Here's a clip courtesy of Colin Knorr, whose YouTube channel describes him as an attorney, gun rights activist and urban gun enthusiast, and one of the leading voices on behalf of gun ownership in the never-ending political battle to preserve gun rights and the right to self-defense afforded through the Second Amendment. In it, he exposes Kamala Harris on her Marxist left anti-Second Amendment agenda.
Kamala, what are you talking about? When you were asked if you think we should have mandatory buybacks, you said this.
Mandatory buyback of quote-unquote assault weapons, and whether or not you do, how does that idea not go against fundamentally the Second Amendment?
Great question. I do believe that we need to do buyback. I'll tell you, when elected president, if the United States Congress continues to fail to have the courage to do something about this, I'm prepared to take executive action and put in place a ban on the importation of assault weapons into our country. But we still have to deal with the over 2 million assault weapons that are currently in the streets of America. And so a buyback program is a good idea.
Then when you were vice president, you insinuated that we should do what the Australians did.
Gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country. And let us be clear, it does not have to be this way, as our friends in Australia have demonstrated.
Anyone want to take a guess what the Australians did with the guns?
The tough new laws banned the sale and importation of all automatic and semi-automatic rifles and shotguns, and perhaps most significantly, called for a massive mandatory gun buyback. Australia's government confiscated and destroyed nearly 700,000 firearms, reducing the number of gun-owning households by half.
Kamala Harris is doing what politicians love to do, gaslighting the entire country. She's trying to sell the idea that you can be pro-Second Amendment while still wanting to restrict it. Sorry, but that's not how the Second Amendment works. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. There were no exceptions. We've already compromised far more than we should have. But she's still pushing for more. Even when she was calling for mandatory buybacks, that wasn't enough, which is also just a fancy way of saying gun confiscation. They slap a nice label on it to make it sound less oppressive, but it's the same shit.
Now, do you see how gun safety quickly morphs into gun confiscation and the complete erosion of our guaranteed Second Amendment rights? This is the Marxist, socialist communism that the far left has been cultivating in our society since the Wilson administration. The door was gently opened during the Clinton years and rocketed into orbit under the Obama administration. The Biden-Harris administration continuing on with Obama 2.0 like good corrupt sycophants. A Harris presidency ascends another full-blown Marxist to the White House. Far from being the skipping little kindergartner from Oakland, really Berkeley, Harris was the daughter of 2 PhDs, one of which taught Marxist philosophy at Stanford University. After Harris's mother divorced her father, she moved to an affluent neighborhood in Canada, where she spent her formidable years growing up until college. And guess what she studied in college? Economic and political science, the same subjects her father taught at Stanford. Now, this disingenuous, lying Marxist is gaslighting the American electorate about her true motives while refusing to talk about what she really believes, what her policies really are, and what her presidency really would be. People, we cannot be so stupid as to cede our country to Marxist socialism because the mainstream and social media complexes have propagandized Orange Man bad. As I said in a piece titled Harris Walls, Policies Steeped in Deceptive Fantasy, only the terminally inane would buy into the crap Harris's handlers are trying to pass off as policy. There is no cavalry coming, my friends. We can't wait for the elected or activist classes to fix what's broken. We must, all of us, advance the knowledge about Marxism, socialism, and communism, the death and poverty it produces, and the totalitarian oppression it gifts the elitist class. Freedom dies under Marxism. Individualism dies under socialism and communism. And freedom started dying under Obama, continues under Biden-Harris, and the coffin lid will be shut if we are stupid enough to elect Kamala Harris to the presidency. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station, WGUL AM 860 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
They're funding abortions, demanding Americans comply with their woke climate agenda. They teach people that the U.S. is a system of white supremacy while stripping away your Second Amendment rights. A California Democrat? No. It's Bank of America under CEO Brian Moynihan. There's enough people pushing political agendas in America. Your bank shouldn't be one of them. Bank of America. Their lies start with their name.
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Whenever they're asked a question about their proposed policies, they never give a straight answer. In fact, when they do give an answer, they take both sides of the issue.
In 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
How are the voters supposed to know what they actually stand for?
Let me be very clear. I am unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Maybe that's the point.
Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
My values have not changed.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
I've been itching to get your take, Frank, on what happened in Lebanon with Israel. They're waiting for the next things to start blowing up, evidently. So much so that they're unplugging their electronic devices. They don't want to be near their cell phones. Israel has really pulled off a Mission Impossible style operation here.
Yeah, if in fact Israel was the source of this, somebody reached out and touched somebody. It was ingenious. Ingenious. It would to first be the supplier of the pagers to Hezbollah. I mean, it's not like Hezbollah goes over to Best Buy and says, hey, we need a bunch of pagers for our terrorist network. You have to believe that they thought that they were getting these pagers from someone who understood the nature of their business.
Yeah.
And to be able to infiltrate that ring with exploding pagers, that's somebody should get a medal for something.
I realize how serious this kind of operation was, but I just wonder, Frank, if maybe on those pagers or two-way radios, if the brand was Acme. I just think it'd be ironic.
It's stunning the lack of foresight that whoever purchased these pagers had when purchasing them. It was a hell of a clandestine coup. If this was Mossad, it was a hell of a clandestine coup to not only be able to infiltrate that ring, that Hezbollah ring, but to get to their purchasing department. Hello, Hezbollah purchasing department. Hey, I've got a deal for you.
I mean, but again, if we saw this in a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie, you would say, that's pretty fantastic. I wish we could really do stuff like that in real life. And here it is.
It gives you pause a little bit to wonder what else has been put in place and by whom. Now that this is out in the open, that something like this can be, don't think that the nefarious people out there aren't thinking about how to use that technology as well. So this has opened up Pandora's box when you start thinking it through all the way. If the Israelis can figure out how to do this, I'm telling you right now, somewhere in Tehran, somewhere in Beijing, somewhere in Moscow, somewhere in North Korea, somebody's working on something like this to try and get it into the mainstream. Can you imagine if that would happen in the United States?
Yeah.
At the hand of Al-Qaeda circa 9/11?
No, you're exactly right. And that's, again, simultaneous, massive event that could happen as a result of that. But, with what Israel apparently has pulled off here, this is coupled with the idea that there could be a larger military operation into Lebanon. And what this does is it incapacitates so many of the Hezbollah operatives is like a precursor, basically, to just confuse them. And then suddenly you're able to conduct your operation a lot more efficiently.
Well, it's certainly a diversion, but it took out, what are they saying, 4,000 plus of their operatives?
Yeah.
Including including a lot of high-level people? So if I'm the Hezbollah leadership right now, you got to pull back for a moment and say, okay, we're going to have to think this through, because the next time we launch rockets, what's going to go off over here?
You're exactly right about that. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're not sitting down saying, you know what, the retaliation for this is going to be incredible. Because when they get caught with their exploding pants down, they strike back in a spectacular way. So hopefully Israel's going, okay, we set the trap. I hope they take the bait.
Well, what do you think about Kamala going over and talking to Oprah and then trying to look like, oh, I've got guns and this, is she just trying to, again, personify this thing that she thinks people want to vote for, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. She's not crawling up into her tree stand. She's not a hunter. As a matter of fact, there is a video out now that I saw late last night that's making the rounds, and I posted on my personal social media that shows her talking when she was the district attorney up in San Francisco about not only being anti-gun, but saying that it doesn't matter whether you own these things legally or not. We're going to come into your home to make sure that you're storing them properly. I mean, yeah. That's stunning. That's stunning. That's saying, Second Amendment be damned. We're going to violate the Second and Fourth Amendment to come into your house to make sure that you are storing legally obtained and licensed guns the way we say you should store them.
Well, exactly. And that gets them into your house as well. I mean, under any kind of pretense like that.
Well, without a warrant.
Yeah, precisely.
And she moved that forward into legislation that hit Gavin Newsom's desk at that time. So for her to say, oh, I'm a gun owner, don't you worry, I'm not coming after your goods. This is her putting on a mask to be someone completely different than who she is and what she stands for, to pander for votes. And if you're a gun owner and you buy this BS, be careful where you point that muzzle, because I don't want you flashing me.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, what do you think, too? Obviously, we had this big rate cut on Wednesday. and it's anticipated there could be another one before the end of the year. But between now and Election Day, the Harris campaign is going to be trying to tout this as saying, look, the economy's so much better. And look, they even had to cut rates because of that. And so is this truly a gift for Kamala Harris?
Absolutely. And Jerome Powell's being completely non-transparent in his disingenuousness. You know, let me ask you this. When the rates get cut, does your food bill go down?
Nope.
No, it doesn't. Do gas prices go down? No. That's because we live in a free market economy. This isn't after the fact. This is like turning a cruise ship and expecting it to happen on a dime. It doesn't happen that way. If you're going out and buying a house, it may help you depending on how the banks deal with their rates. But just because the Fed does it, all that does is make money borrowing for the banks easier to do.
Right.
You know, so it's an illusion. And the mainstream media will jump on this saying, oh, then look at this. Now the banks, the Fed cut the rates. Now the economy is great. Don't worry about it. Until you can feel that pain ease in your wallet, until it doesn't cost you $300 for what used to be $150 at the supermarket, it doesn't affect you.
Right. Oh, no, exactly. Exactly. But they'll try to play on that perception and, this idea that, well, finally the Biden-Harris, quote, policies, are starting to really shine through. I mean, it's just so maddening the way that they will try to do that. But what you're talking about, Frank, is right on point. It doesn't affect everybody's daily lives. You're still going to be shelling it out when you go to the grocery store, for example. But I tell you what, we do have a caller on the line. I think they got a quick question for you. Do you mind if we take a call?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. We've got Driver Mike giving us a call this morning. Good morning, Driver Mike. You're on with Frank Silvato. Do you got a question? Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Carl, Mr. Frank. About them pagers exploding. I never laughed so hard in my life. I heard on the main news overseas. It was said twice, and then nothing has been said about it. Those pagers came from Taiwan, and Taiwan put them on a shipping container. Well, who's in between Taiwan and that? China. And I'm betting you 9-1, China got a hold of it, and they just trying to throw a stick in the side there. But like I said, it was only said twice, and it's like they made a mistake of letting that out, and then it was hush-hush, and the same day. And then all the feeds, the news feeds, they were changing their tune. And then when it happened with the radios, I'm like, oh, yeah. Someone's taking the bait big time.
No kidding.
Anyway, this Friday, people, drive safe, take your time. Let's not have too many accidents out there.
Here. Good advice. Hey, thank you, Driver Mike. We appreciate the call. Talk to you again soon. Yep. Take care. All right, stay safe out there. Driver Mike, everybody. And yeah, what do you think, Frank? Obviously, they got these pagers from somewhere, but like you were saying, somebody did not figure out that these were not your normal pagers.
No, and then if they came out of Taiwan, then they would have had to gone through a bunch of different ports that have detection process for plastic explosives and everything else. So it would have had to take place between Taiwan or after they were inspected for export in Taiwan until where they reached their port of call. Now that's completely doable if you're an organization like Mossad. But I'll tell you what, if those pagers came out of Taiwan and they were messed with before they hit their port of call, if I'm China and I'm importing pagers for my people from Taiwan in any kind of a trade agreement, I'm a little worried right now if I'm in the Chinese Communist Party.
No kidding. No kidding. I mean, this is a very clandestine, very clever, but also, and again, it's that fear factor that's existing right now within Hezbollah.
If in fact this is a good guy hits back against bad guy type of thing, they've taken some of the strategies of terror to reverse them back onto the nefarious actors. Because this is what terrorism's goal is. It's not necessarily to kill as many people as you can. It's to strike fear into your opponents so that they second guess themselves at every avenue. And if I'm, looking for communications avenues that are clandestine, and you have to stay away from cell phones and you move to pagers, and then your pager explodes, you've got to look at all these avenues saying, okay, how could they exploit these now? It slows you down, throws a wrench into the machine, and that's the goal. So they achieved, whoever it was, achieved their goal of making their opposition worried about the next move or how they communicate or how they go about their daily operations. And it's a brilliant way to do it, but it's opened up Pandora's box. It doesn't change that.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we got about a minute or so, Frank, but what do you think about the Electoral College map here? I mean, we had a call earlier about Trump. They thought Trump was having some real trouble in Pennsylvania, but is trying to put New York in play. Do you think that Pennsylvania is going to go for the idea of Kamala Harris and roll the dice as to whether or not she really won't ban fracking?
With the announcement that the Teamsters decided not to endorse, and with the number of blue-collar workers in Pennsylvania, I don't see Pennsylvania being written off right now. And those 19 Electoral College votes mean something. So if I'm Kamala Harris and the Harris campaign looking at their internal pollster numbers, I'm a little worried about Pennsylvania because the Teamsters really gave her the middle finger. God bless you, Teamsters. If you like the podcast, please go over to undergroundusa.com and subscribe. You'll get every article and every podcast directly to your email inbox or in the Substack app, which I suggest you download. It's a great tool for knowledge. And remember, talk politics and religion, the two subjects that the elites have told you are impolite to talk about. Gee, I wonder why. Talk politics and religion with your family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. You don't have to be caustic about it, but this is how we find out that we have more in common than the elites insist we have indifference. That's how we take their power away. E pluribus unum. You're listening to Underground USA. My name is Frank Salvato. We'll be right back after this.